The night it all changed began with a question you never expect from someone who seems steady, calm, and impossible to shake. The question came quietly, almost shyly, and it carried a weight you could feel even without understanding why. You have seen people lose their balance, you have seen people hide their fears, but have you ever seen someone you trust break the silence with a truth they can no longer carry alone? That is where Sandra's story begins, and it will pull you in more than you think, because she had kept something buried for so long that even she forgot how heavy it had become. And when she finally looked at Keanu that evening, she realized she was seeing him in a way she never allowed herself to before, and that changed everything around her before she could stop it. Sandra arrived at the quiet private studio late, expecting nothing more than a routine planning session for a charity video they were recording together. It was a dim and peaceful space just outside the city, lit by warm lamps and filled with that soft hum you feel in places where people speak gently. She liked that place because it never demanded anything from her. No cameras flashing, no sudden questions, no chaos, just a space to breathe. She thought she could handle anything that night, because she had handled far worse in her life. Yet she was not prepared for the moment when Keanu turned to her with eyes that held something she could not read. He stood near the window, the faint street light drawing a soft outline around him, making him appear both present and distant. He was quiet, even more than usual, and that alone made her feel a strange tension rise inside her. She always understood him, even when he said almost nothing. But tonight the silence felt different, heavier, slower, full of something that almost tasted like a secret. She tried to start with casual conversation, something safe, something expected, asking about the notes for the project, but he did not move toward the table or respond with his usual thoughtful nod. He simply watched her with that calm patience of his, as if searching her expression for something she did not know she was hiding. She felt her breath tighten just a little. It was a feeling she rarely experienced because she was used to controlling every part of her emotions. But Keanu had a strange ability to disarm her without trying. Not because he forced anything, but because he carried a quiet honesty that made people forget their defenses. He finally spoke, and it was a single sentence that made her heart stop for a second. "I think there is something you are not telling me." He did not say it with suspicion. He did not say it with frustration. He said it with a soft concern that reached her deeper than she expected. She did not answer right away. She just felt her mind drift back to memories she kept folded away, memories of moments when she saw him differently but never allowed those thoughts to surface. She had spent years convincing herself that the kindness he showed her was simply who he was, nothing more, nothing deeper. But lately, something about him felt different, as if he carried a quiet sadness behind his smile whenever she pulled away too quickly, whenever she laughed a little too loudly to mask a feeling she did not want to acknowledge. She tried to deflect, asking what he meant, but he stepped closer with that calm, steady way of his, never invading her space yet somehow making her feel exposed. He lowered his voice, not because he feared being heard, but because he respected her enough not to push too hard. "You seem tired," he said, "in a way you never admit." When she heard that, something inside her shifted. Nobody had pointed that out to her in years, at least not in a way that felt genuine. People always assumed she was strong, endlessly composed, able to survive anything. But Keanu saw the small cracks she worked so hard to patch. He always noticed things she thought she hid well. He noticed when her smile was too practiced. He noticed when her laugh carried a little pressure instead of ease. He noticed when she avoided certain questions. And on this night, he noticed something deeper than she was ready to face. She looked away, pretending to sort the papers on the table, but her hands trembled slightly. She hoped he would not catch that, but he did. Of course he did. He always did. He walked slowly toward the table, not touching it, not touching her, simply placing himself close enough so she could feel his presence. He was patient. He always gave her space, yet somehow his silence pushed her to speak more than anyone ever had. She exhaled, long and slow, trying to release the tightness in her chest. But the more she tried to control it, the more her emotions rose. She remembered the past weeks, how she felt a strange warmth every time he checked on her without a reason. How she noticed him lingering for just a second longer when she walked away. How he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. She told herself she was imagining it. She told herself they were just friends. She told herself there was no room in her life for anything complicated. But this moment proved she could not keep pretending. Before she could say anything, he spoke again, softer this time. "If something is hurting you, you do not have to face it alone." She felt her throat tighten. The truth was, she had kept too much inside for too long. She carried her grief, her doubts, her guilt, and her fears so tightly that she forgot what it felt like to let someone support her. And here stood a man who treated her with more respect than she believed she deserved, offering a place where she could rest for just a moment. She turned toward him slowly, her eyes meeting his. He did not flinch. He did not break the gaze. He simply waited, giving her the space to choose honesty on her own. Then she said quietly, almost whispering, "I saw something in you recently that scared me." His expression did not change. He remained calm, open, steady. "What did you see?" he asked gently. She hesitated, searching for the right words, because saying them out loud meant acknowledging feelings she buried for years. She took a step closer, her voice shaking slightly. "I saw the way you look at me sometimes, and I did not know how to handle it." For the first time that night, she saw something shift in his eyes. Not surprise, not guilt, something softer, something vulnerable, something honest, something she had suspected but never dared to believe. He exhaled quietly, almost relieved, as if she had just opened a door he thought would remain closed forever. "I look at you that way," he said, "because I care about you more than I can hide." She felt the room freeze around them. The words hit her harder than she expected, because she always thought she was imagining everything. She believed her feelings were blurred illusions formed during stressful moments, long nights, and emotional exhaustion. But hearing him confirm what she sensed made her heart race. She stepped back out of instinct, overwhelmed by the weight of what he said. She did not want to hurt him. She did not want to mislead him. She did not want to face something she was not sure she was ready for. But he did not push closer. He respected every inch of distance she created. "Keanu," she whispered, "I cannot let you care like that, not for me, not now." His expression did not harden. He did not let disappointment show. He simply stood there with quiet understanding, even though she could feel a flicker of pain behind his eyes. "You are allowed to be cared for," he replied gently, "even if you do not feel ready." She looked away again, trying to steady her emotions. She felt exposed, afraid, and strangely relieved all at once. But then something happened inside her that she could not ignore. She felt a sudden rush of fear, not because of him, but because of the truth rising inside her. She realized she cared too. She had cared for him far longer than she admitted. She cared in the way her heart eased whenever he was near. She cared in the way she trusted him without effort. She cared in the way she felt safe with him in a world that rarely offered safety. But caring felt dangerous. Caring meant risking pain, risking loss, risking everything she worked so hard to rebuild after every heartbreak in her life. Before she could gather her thoughts, the studio door suddenly opened with a sharp clatter, making both of them turn instantly. A staff member rushed in, face pale, breath shaky, voice trembling with urgency. "Sandra, you need to come outside right now," she said quickly. "There is something you need to see. Something happened, and it involves someone from your past." Sandra froze. Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, filled with concern. The staff member continued, her voice cracking. "It is serious, and it is something you were never told." Sandra felt her heart drop into her stomach as a chill raced up her spine. Because she immediately knew the truth was about to break open in ways she was not ready to face. And Keanu stepped closer, not to control her, but to stand beside her, ready to face whatever was coming. But she had no idea that what waited outside would not only shake her life. It would change the way she saw him forever. And the truth she was about to learn would pull them both into a storm they never expected. When Sandra stepped out of the studio with Keanu close behind her, she felt the night air press against her skin in a way that made her breath tighten. The quiet parking area, usually calm and empty, felt charged with something she could not name. The staff member who had rushed inside pointed toward a black SUV parked near the entrance, its headlights off, its presence heavy and almost unsettling. Sandra felt a strange mix of fear and confusion rising inside her, because something about the way the vehicle sat in the shadows made her instincts tangle with memories she spent years trying to bury. The staff member spoke again, her voice still shaky. She explained that someone had arrived asking for Sandra, waiting silently, refusing to leave until she came outside. The woman did not reveal who it was, only insisting that the visitor knew details about Sandra's past that she had never shared publicly. This alone made Sandra's heart tremble. She had always kept certain parts of her life locked away, not because she wanted to be secretive, but because those memories carried weight she did not want anyone to bear with her. But now, standing in the dim glow of the streetlights, she realized that something she tried so hard to protect was forcing its way into the present. She took a step forward, her hands slightly trembling, and she felt Keanu move just a little closer behind her, not touching, not speaking, but offering a familiar presence that steadied her breathing. His calm energy wrapped around her like invisible armor. She glanced back at him for a moment, and he gave her a gentle nod, silent but strong, letting her know that he was here for whatever came next. It was strange how someone so quiet could feel so reassuring. Yet with him there, she felt just enough courage to keep going. The SUV door opened slowly, with the kind of hesitation that comes from someone carrying years of regret. A man stepped out, older than she remembered, his shoulders slouched under an invisible weight. The soft streetlight revealed a face lined with exhaustion and haunted by stories he never told. She froze when she recognized him. She had not seen him in so many years that she once believed he had disappeared forever. Her breath caught in her throat as she whispered his name under her breath, barely able to believe he was standing in front of her again. He took a few cautious steps toward her, his eyes filled with an apology she did not ask for yet could instantly feel. She did not know whether to move away or move closer. All she could do was stand rooted to the ground as memories began flooding back. Memories of trust, disappointment, confusion, and unanswered questions. Memories she kept locked away because opening them again meant reopening old wounds she promised herself she would never touch. The man stopped several feet away, clearly afraid of stepping too close. His voice cracked as he said her name, almost fragile, almost unfamiliar after so many years. Sandra felt her chest tighten. She wanted to speak, but her voice refused to form even a single word. The silence between them felt thick with everything they never resolved. Keanu watched carefully, studying both of them without judgment. He did not interrupt, did not move forward, did not try to take control. He simply remained steady and grounded beside her, giving her the strength to face something she never thought she would confront again. The man took a deep breath, his eyes glistening with something painfully honest. He said he came because he felt time slipping away from him, and he could no longer bear the regret he carried. He said he had made mistakes that changed her life in ways he never intended. He admitted he had truths she deserved to hear long ago, truths he lacked the courage to speak until now. Sandra felt her heart pounding harder with every word, because she knew this moment would eventually break whatever fragile emotional balance she was holding onto. She took a slow step forward, her voice trembling as she finally found the strength to speak. She asked him why he had returned after vanishing without explanation. She asked why he had left her facing everything alone when she needed answers the most. She asked why he thought he had the right to appear now, after all the years she spent rebuilding pieces of herself he helped shatter. He listened without interrupting, letting every word settle into the space between them. Then he confessed something she never expected. He revealed that he had been watching from a distance for years, unable to interfere, yet unable to let go completely. He explained that someone threatened him back then, forcing him to disappear to keep her safe. He told her he kept silent to protect her from a situation she never even knew existed. These words struck her deeply, pulling her into a storm of emotions she could not untangle. Sandra felt herself sway with confusion, anger, fear, and a painful understanding she did not want. And through it all, she felt Keanu behind her, a steady presence that kept her grounded when everything else around her felt like shifting sand. As the man continued speaking, he revealed details that made her stomach twist. He spoke about letters he wrote but never sent, calls he tried to make but could not. He spoke about a truth he discovered long ago, one that changed everything he believed about her past and the people involved in it. He told her there was someone she trusted who had kept secrets from her, someone she never suspected, someone who shaped her life more than she realized. The words hit her like a wave she was not prepared to face. She took a step back, overwhelmed, her breath sharp and uneven. Keanu instinctively reached out, not grabbing her, not pulling her, simply offering his hand as a quiet anchor in the chaos. She stared at his hand for a moment before slowly placing her fingers against his, feeling the soft reassurance of someone who saw her pain without trying to control it. The man swallowed hard and said there was something far worse she needed to hear, something that would change her understanding of her past forever. He said he had kept this truth buried because he feared how it would break her, but now he feared more what would happen if she discovered it without warning. Sandra's heart pounded painfully. She felt the world narrowing around her, tilting in ways she could not control. She whispered one question, barely audible. "What truth are you talking about?" The man lowered his eyes, voice trembling as he answered. "The truth about who caused the event that changed your life. The event you always blamed yourself for. The event you thought was just a tragic accident." Sandra felt the air leave her lungs, because she suddenly realized he was talking about the one moment in her past that shaped her future more than anything else. The moment she thought she understood. The moment she believed she carried alone. Keanu stepped even closer, sensing her fear rising. And then the man said quietly, with a voice filled with dread, "The person responsible is someone you trust today, someone very close, someone you would never suspect." The world seemed to freeze. Sandra stared at him, unable to breathe, unable to blink. And Keanu felt her hand tremble violently in his own. Because they both knew that what he was about to reveal next would not only shake Sandra's past. It would destroy her present. The silence after his words felt heavier than anything Sandra had ever carried. It wrapped around her like a cold fog, making it hard to breathe, as if the air itself had thickened with fear. She stared at the man in front of her, trying to understand how the world had shifted in a single moment. Every memory she kept locked away began pushing against the walls she had built around them, demanding to be felt again. She did not want them. She was not ready for them. But they came anyway, pulling her deeper into a place she hoped she had escaped years ago. Keanu sensed her unraveling even before she did. He stepped closer, slow and calm, his presence warm and grounding. He did not speak, because he understood that the wrong word might shatter her completely. Instead, he simply stayed beside her, letting her know without saying it that she did not have to face this alone. She felt his quiet support reaching into the cracks forming inside her, holding her together just enough to stay standing. The man took a breath that shook in his chest, as if he struggled to gather the courage to continue. His eyes flicked toward Keanu for a moment, then back to Sandra, almost as if he feared the truth would turn the night into something none of them could control. He lifted his hands slightly, palms open, a gesture of apology more than explanation. He said he knew the information he carried would collapse parts of her life she thought were stable. He said he wished he had been strong enough to tell her years ago. But fear and guilt kept him silent, and now he feared his silence had allowed the situation to grow far worse. Sandra tried to speak, but her voice broke the moment she formed the first syllable. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to steady her breathing. She needed answers. She needed clarity. She needed to understand why this man suddenly returned with truths that threatened to set her entire world on fire. She asked him what he meant by someone close to her being involved. She demanded to know how he knew this. She asked why he waited so long to come forward if the truth was so important. He listened to every question with an expression full of regret. Then he explained that back then he found evidence by accident, something he should have taken to her immediately but did not. Fear clouded his judgment. He believed he could handle the situation alone. He believed he could remove the danger quietly. But he failed, and by the time he realized how deep the situation went, it was too late to undo the damage. He told her the person responsible had hidden their involvement so well that even he struggled to believe it at first. He told her the truth was connected to decisions made by people around her who claimed to protect her. Sandra felt her heart pound so hard it almost hurt. She wanted him to stop speaking, yet she wanted him to finish. She wanted the truth, but she feared it more than anything else. Keanu sensed her fear deepening, and he shifted slightly closer. Their arms brushed gently. That small touch steadied her enough to keep listening. The man continued, revealing tiny details that made her head spin. He spoke about conversations he overheard, messages he found, documents hidden away. He spoke about someone whose actions were not cruel in a direct way but rooted in selfishness, fear, and a desire to control outcomes without considering the impact on her life. He said the person had manipulated situations, choices, and even people around her, creating a chain of events that led to the moment Sandra believed was just a tragic accident. He told her the truth was buried to protect reputations and maintain illusions, but the consequences fell on her shoulders instead. Sandra stumbled back slightly as the words sank in, her chest tightening. She felt Keanu steady her with a gentle hand on her arm, not gripping, not pulling, just supporting. She leaned into his presence without even realizing it. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the comfort he offered, something she rarely accepted from anyone. The man finally said he had returned now because the person involved had resurfaced in ways that could put Sandra at risk again. He said he had seen signs of the same destructive pattern forming, and he could not stay silent anymore. He feared history was about to repeat itself, and this time the outcome might be far worse. Sandra's voice trembled as she demanded the name. She could not live in the uncertainty. She could not piece together fragments without knowing who stood behind the shadows of her past. She asked again, louder this time, her voice cracking under the pressure of fear and anger. The man hesitated, lowering his gaze. He looked truly afraid of what would happen when the truth came out. He seemed to weigh the consequences in his mind, as if calculating how deeply this revelation would cut her. But Sandra stepped forward, determination rising through the fear. She told him she spent too many years carrying guilt and confusion. She said she deserved to know the truth. Finally, he looked up, his eyes filled with remorse. But before he could speak the name, a sudden sound cut through the tension like a blade. A sharp metallic clatter echoed from the far end of the parking lot. All three of them turned instantly. Keanu's posture changed in a heartbeat, shifting into quiet alertness. He scanned the shadows with a focus Sandra had never seen before, his jaw tightening subtly as if he sensed something threatening. The man's face went pale, and for a moment, Sandra saw real fear flash in his eyes, not the fear of revealing the truth. The fear of being watched. Keanu took a slow step in front of Sandra, positioning himself protectively without touching her. He narrowed his eyes toward the dark corner of the lot. The lights did not reach that far, leaving the space washed in deep shadows. But Sandra saw movement. Small, quick, deliberate, like someone stepping back the moment they were noticed. Keanu's voice dropped to a soft whisper only she could hear. "Someone else is here." The man took a shaky breath and whispered that this was exactly what he feared. He said the person who had dismantled Sandra's past had eyes everywhere. He said they never acted alone. He said Sandra was not supposed to hear the truth tonight. Her pulse spiked. Keanu's breathing slowed, not in fear but in controlled readiness. He took another step forward, placing himself between Sandra and the darkness. Everything about him shifted into a silent shield, calm yet intensely aware. The man looked at Sandra with urgency, knowing he had only seconds. "I will tell you the name," he said, "but not here, not with them watching." Keanu turned his head slightly, his voice steady. "Who is watching?" The man opened his mouth to answer, but was cut off by the sound of a car engine roaring to life deep in the shadows, tires screeching as a vehicle sped away before any of them could react. It happened too fast, too suddenly, as if whoever was listening had heard enough to retreat before their identity was exposed. Keanu grabbed Sandra's hand, pulling her gently back toward the lights, toward safety. She clung to his hand tightly, her breath shaking. The man looked around nervously, his expression full of dread. When the parking lot fell silent again, he turned back to them with urgency in his eyes. He said he had no more time to wait. He said he would contact them again within 24 hours with the full truth. He said he would reveal the name then. But before he got into his SUV, he gave Sandra one final warning in a low, trembling voice. "The person responsible is someone you speak to often, someone who appears supportive, someone who has a place in your life right now. Be careful who you trust tonight." Sandra felt her blood run cold. Keanu squeezed her hand gently, grounding her as the SUV pulled away. She looked up at him, fear and confusion swirling in her eyes. And that was the moment she realized something far more terrifying. Keanu looked like he already had a guess. And he did not look relieved by it. The ride back to Sandra's home was quiet in a way that felt heavy rather than peaceful. The city lights passed slowly across the car windows, creating soft flickers of gold and silver that stretched across her face, revealing the thoughts she tried to hide. Sandra sat in the passenger seat, staring ahead without blinking, her breathing shallow and uneven. Keanu drove with calm control, hands steady on the wheel, eyes focused on the road, though Sandra could feel he was watching her carefully through every reflection in the glass. He did not force her to talk. He did not ask questions. He simply remained present, which somehow made her want to speak even more. When they reached her house, she unlocked the door with trembling fingers, and Keanu followed her inside quietly. He paused in the entryway, waiting to see if she wanted him to stay or leave. For a moment, she felt herself crumble inside, the weight of the evening pressing so hard against her chest that she struggled to keep her voice steady. She whispered that she did not want to be alone. The moment the words left her mouth, Keanu nodded gently and stepped inside, closing the door behind them with a soft click. Sandra moved to the living room, lowering herself onto the couch while Keanu stayed a short distance away, giving her space yet refusing to let her face the storm without support. She pressed her palms against her knees, trying to control the shaking, but the more she tried to steady herself, the more her emotions swirled into chaos. The truth was she had been holding her life together with fragile threads, and tonight someone pulled too hard on one of them, leaving everything she built trembling. Keanu finally spoke, his voice quiet and slow, as if he feared pushing her beyond her limit. "You do not have to say anything, but if you want to talk, I am here." She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the warmth of his presence nearby. Then she whispered that she felt lost, as if the past she thought she understood had turned into something unfamiliar, something darker. She said she did not know who to trust anymore. She said she feared the truth would break her in ways she may not be able to repair again. Keanu took a small step forward, not touching her, but letting his voice wrap around her like a soft shield. "You are stronger than you think," he said gently, "but you do not need to be strong alone." The words touched something deep inside her. She could not remember the last time someone spoke to her in a way that made her feel safe rather than pressured. She looked at him, her eyes heavy with fear and unspoken grief. Then she asked something she had kept to herself since the parking lot. "Keanu, you looked like you already knew who he was talking about." The question hung in the air like a fragile piece of glass suspended between them. Keanu did not answer right away. He inhaled slowly, his eyes lowering to the floor for a moment, as if searching for the right way to respond without adding more pain to her already overflowing heart. After a long silence, he spoke, each word careful and full of consideration. "I do not know for sure," he said quietly, "but I have seen things that began to make me wonder long before tonight." Her heart tightened. She asked what he meant, but his expression softened with caution, as if he wished to protect her from more worry until the truth became clear. He explained that he noticed patterns in the behavior of someone around her, someone who always stepped into her life at convenient moments, someone who presented support but carried a subtle weight of control beneath their kindness. He said he never wanted to speak up without evidence, because he respected her and did not want to influence her relationships unfairly. Sandra rubbed her hands together, her fingers cold, her breath shaky. She asked him directly who he believed the man was talking about. She needed honesty. She needed clarity. She needed something to hold onto in the chaos. Keanu hesitated again, then finally sat down beside her, though leaving a respectful distance. He lowered his voice even more, speaking with a soft firmness. "I think it might be someone in your close circle," he said. "Someone tied to your career, someone who has always seemed too invested in controlling what happens around you." Sandra felt a chill crawl up her spine as a name flickered in her mind. Someone she trusted, someone she worked with for years, someone who always claimed to protect her reputation, someone who insisted they had her best interests at heart. She pushed the thought away, shaking her head, refusing to believe it. She said that person had been loyal, present, and supportive through some of her hardest years. She said she could not imagine them involved in anything that could harm her. Keanu listened carefully, not arguing, not dismissing her feelings. Instead, he said something that shook her even deeper. "Sometimes the people who feel safest are the ones who hide the most," he said quietly. "And sometimes the people closest to us protect their own fears by shaping our lives in ways we do not realize." Sandra stared at him, her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to deny it outright, but somewhere deep inside she felt a quiet echo of recognition. Small moments she brushed aside began rising again, comments that felt slightly off, decisions made without her approval, opportunities she lost without clear explanations, subtle pressure disguised as advice. She felt her heart race because suddenly the pieces did not look random anymore. She said she needed proof. She said she needed something real. She said she could not accuse anyone based on fear and suspicion. Keanu agreed, telling her they would not jump to conclusions until they had the full truth. But he also said she needed to be careful, because if the person suspected truly played a role in her past, they would not remain silent once they realized someone was digging into old secrets. As they talked, Sandra's phone vibrated on the table. The sound was sharp and unexpected, making her flinch. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop when she saw the name. It was someone from her close circle, Someone who almost never called this late. Someone Keanu had quietly grown wary of. She hesitated to answer, but Keanu watched her with gentle concern. He told her to follow her instincts, not her fear. Her hands shook as she picked up the phone, pressing it to her ear. The voice on the other end sounded calm, almost too calm, carrying a softness that felt carefully crafted rather than natural. They asked if she was home safe. They asked if she needed anything. They said they were worried about her and felt something was off. Every word sounded warm, but beneath it, Sandra sensed a subtle pressure she never noticed before. The voice suddenly asked if she met anyone unexpected tonight. Her breath caught. Keanu, sitting close enough to sense her tension, looked at her sharply. He did not need to hear the words. He saw everything in her eyes. She answered vaguely, trying to sound normal, but the voice on the phone pressed further, asking again, with a tone that felt almost demanding now. Did someone show up tonight? Sandra's heart pounded. Someone was watching. Someone already knew. She said she was tired and would speak tomorrow. The voice paused for a long moment, then finally said goodnight in a tone that sent a cold shiver down her spine. When the call ended, she set the phone down with shaking hands. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. Now you understand why he said you are being watched. Sandra closed her eyes, panic rising. Keanu gently placed a hand on her back, grounding her before fear consumed her completely. She leaned into the warmth of his support, letting it keep her steady for a moment. Then she whispered the words neither of them wanted to say. The person who called me is the same person I was thinking about, the one you were describing. Keanu's jaw tightened subtly. Before he could respond, Sandra's phone lit up again. This time it was a message. Only 4 words. But those 4 words made her entire body turn cold. We need to talk now. She looked up at Keanu with wide eyes, breath trembling. Because the message was not a request. It was a command. And the person who sent it was the one they were starting to suspect. Sandra stared at the glowing message on her phone, her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. The 4 simple words seemed to pulse brighter with every passing second, filling the room with a cold pressure that wrapped itself around her neck. She felt Keanu shift beside her, his gaze fixed on her face, reading every subtle tremor in her expression. He did not need to see the message to know exactly what it meant. The fear in her eyes told him everything. The silence between them stretched until it felt too heavy to hold, and finally Sandra lowered the phone slowly, her hands shaking so much she nearly dropped it. Keanu gently reached out and steadied her wrist with a soft touch, not gripping, not controlling, simply helping her ground herself. She looked at him, her eyes glassy, her voice barely holding together as she whispered that the message came from the person they were beginning to suspect, the person tied to her past, the person who might have shaped the tragedy she never fully understood. Keanu exhaled quietly, a sound filled with both concern and resolve. He asked her what she wanted to do, reminding her that she was in control of how this moment would unfold. He did not push. He did not offer quick solutions. He simply asked what she felt safe doing next. Sandra looked away, overwhelmed by the storm inside her chest. She said she did not know, and that terrified her even more because she was someone who usually understood her choices long before she acted on them. She ran her fingers through her hair, pacing slowly across the living room as her emotions crashed against each other. She felt fear, confusion, anger, and a deep sadness she could not name. She remembered moments with the person who had sent the message, memories that once seemed warm but suddenly felt suspicious and heavy. She replayed conversations, glances, decisions made on her behalf, and she began noticing patterns she had ignored for years. Moments where her trust had been gently redirected. Moments where her choices were shaped by someone else's subtle influence. The realization made her stomach twist. Keanu watched her carefully, letting her move, letting her breathe, letting her unravel at her own pace. He knew she needed space to process the weight of the truth she was chasing. But he also knew she should not face that truth alone. When she finally stopped pacing and looked at him again, her eyes filled with a fragile uncertainty, he stepped closer and spoke gently. You do not have to meet them tonight, he said softly. Not when you are scared, not when you are unsure. Wait until you feel ready. She shook her head slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. She said she feared that waiting would make things worse, that the longer she stayed silent, the more the person on the other end of the message might suspect she knew something. She said she felt trapped between the truth she needed and the fear she wanted to escape. Keanu listened without interrupting, his expression calm and protective. Then he said something she did not expect. "If you want to go, I will go with you." The words hit her with a force she did not anticipate. A warmth filled her chest, mixed with relief and gratitude so deep it made her eyes blur. She whispered that she did not want to put him in danger, but Keanu shook his head gently, telling her that danger was not the question. He said the question was whether she needed someone to stand beside her, and if she did, he would be there without hesitation. A long silence passed as Sandra struggled to decide. The message on her phone felt like a quiet threat disguised as concern. She could not ignore it. She could not pretend she did not receive it. And she knew the only way forward was to face the moment that scared her the most. Finally, she inhaled deeply and whispered that she wanted to go, but only if Keanu stayed close. He nodded once, steady and certain, and without saying another word, he retrieved her coat for her. They left her house together, stepping into the cool night air. Sandra locked the door with trembling hands, feeling the weight of what lay ahead pressing against her spine. Keanu walked beside her, matching her pace, his calm presence creating a small bubble of safety around her. They moved down the path toward the car, the quiet street illuminated by soft pools of warm light. Everything felt still, almost too still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The address sent to her phone led them to a quiet office building she knew well, a place connected to her professional life, a place where many important conversations happened. She had walked through those doors countless times before without fear, but tonight the entrance felt cold, distant, and ominous. Keanu parked a short distance away, keeping the car in a spot where he could see the exits clearly. His instincts were sharp and alert, a quiet readiness running through him. As they approached the building, Sandra felt her breath tighten again. She glanced at Keanu, who gave her a slow nod, his expression steady. He did not need words to reassure her. His presence alone did more than any sentence could. They stepped inside, the soft hum of the lobby lights filling the space. The elevators stood quiet, polished doors reflecting their shadows. The message had said to meet in one of the upstairs rooms, a place Sandra had been countless times during her career. Tonight, it felt like stepping into a memory altered by fear. The elevator ride was silent. Sandra felt her heartbeat echo through her whole body, growing louder with every floor they passed. Keanu stood close but not touching, his presence acting like an anchor in the rising tide of her anxiety. When the elevator doors opened, a long hallway stretched before them, dim and quiet. Sandra recognized the walls, the carpeting, the framed photos. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. Every step added pressure to the storm inside her. They reached the room. The door was slightly ajar. Sandra froze. Keanu stepped closer, his expression tightening with caution. He placed a hand gently on her back, grounding her again. She whispered that the door was never left open before. He nodded, noticing the same detail, and pushed it open slowly. The lights inside were dim, casting long shadows across the furniture. Sandra stepped in hesitantly, Keanu right behind her. The air felt heavy, thick with something unspoken. She looked around the room, her heart pounding. Then she saw the person sitting at the table near the window. The very person they suspected. And the moment Sandra saw their eyes, she felt something inside her twist painfully. Their expression was calm, too calm, almost rehearsed. A small smile formed on their lips, but it did not reach their eyes. Instead, their gaze fixed onto Sandra with a strange intensity that made her skin crawl. They greeted her warmly, as if nothing was wrong, as if she was not unraveling, as if they had not sent a message that carried the weight of a threat. Keanu watched silently, his posture calm but alert, his eyes never leaving the person in front of them. The person gestured for Sandra to sit, their voice smooth and gentle. They ignored Keanu completely, pretending he wasn't part of the equation. Sandra remained standing. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "Why did you want to see me tonight?" The person leaned back slightly, hands folded, expression soft. "Because I heard someone from your past reached out." Sandra's blood went cold. Keanu gave a small, subtle shift, barely noticeable unless you were watching him closely. He sensed a dangerous undertone. The person continued speaking, their voice almost sympathetic. "You must be careful about who you listen to," they said. "Some people return only to confuse you." Sandra's nails dug into her palms. The person smiled softly, almost kindly. "Tell me, Sandra, did he tell you something tonight?" Her throat tightened. Keanu stepped half a step closer to her. The person's eyes flicked briefly toward him, then back to Sandra. Their smile faded. Their next words made Sandra's entire body turn cold. You need to stop searching for answers. Some truths will destroy everything you love. Sandra stared at them, heart racing. Keanu's breathing deepened quietly. And then slowly, the person reached into their bag and pulled out a folded document Sandra recognized instantly. A document she thought never existed anymore. A document tied to the incident that changed her life. The person placed it on the table gently, almost lovingly, and whispered, "This is the part of your story you were never supposed to see." The truth she finally faced. The room felt smaller the moment the document landed on the table. Sandra stared at it the way someone stares at a locked door they have feared their whole life. Her pulse echoed in her ears, louder with every second. The weight of that paper felt heavier than anything she had carried in years because she recognized it instantly. She had seen copies, fragments, summaries, but never the full document. She thought it had been destroyed. She believed nobody had access to it anymore. Yet here it was, placed before her like a fragile piece of her past she had never been allowed to touch. Keanu stayed close, silently watching the person across the table. His posture stayed calm, but his eyes sharpened with concern, sensing the shift in the air. The person folded their hands gently, leaning back as if they had just offered her a gift, not a wound. They told Sandra she had no idea how dangerous it was to reopen this chapter of her life. They claimed they were trying to protect her. They insisted they kept the past buried for her own good. But something in their tone no longer felt protective. It felt controlling. Sandra took a slow step toward the table, her breath uneven. Keanu's hand moved slightly, as if ready to steady her if she trembled too much. She whispered that she wanted to see the document. Her voice shook, but it did not break. The person across the table sighed softly and nodded, as if granting her permission to read her own history. She reached out with trembling fingers and unfolded the paper. The moment her eyes scanned the first lines, she felt everything inside her shift. Old emotions she buried long ago rushed back: fear, guilt, confusion, and pain. But mixed with them was something stronger: clarity. The document did not just describe the incident that changed her life. It revealed decisions made behind her back. It listed names of people involved. It recorded conversations she was never meant to see. And in the center of those decisions, woven between every line, was the person sitting in front of her tonight. They had signed off on actions that pushed her into the situation she blamed herself for. They had made choices on her behalf without telling her. They had shaped her path because they believed they knew better. And in the end, the consequences fell on her shoulders alone, while they remained safely removed from everything. Sandra felt her throat tighten. She looked up slowly, tears gathering in her eyes, but her expression held something deeper than sadness. It held understanding. It held truth. It held a strength she thought she lost long ago. The person watched her gently, as if expecting forgiveness. They told her she was young and emotional back then. They said she needed guidance. They said they kept secrets because they feared she would blame the wrong people. They insisted everything they did was to protect her career, her image, her future. But their words fell flat now. Their calmness felt hollow. Their tone felt rehearsed. Their justification felt like a shelter built only for themselves. Keanu finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "You did not protect her, you controlled her. That is not the same." The person's expression tightened at his words. They turned to him with a thin smile, suggesting he was overstepping. They told him he did not understand the pressures of Sandra's life. They said he knew nothing about what she sacrificed. They implied that he had no place in this conversation. Keanu stayed calm, but his eyes held a protective fire that had been rising slowly through the night. "I understand enough," he said gently. "I understand she deserved honesty." Sandra felt a deep warmth rise in her chest. Those simple words touched something important inside her. She realized Keanu had always treated her with respect. He had never tried to control her choices. He had never taken advantage of her vulnerability. He simply stood beside her, steady and patient, offering support without expecting anything in return. The person across the table exhaled, frustrated, as if losing control of the narrative. Their calm mask slipped slightly, revealing a flicker of fear. They told Sandra to ignore Keanu. They said he was turning her against people who had always been loyal. They insisted she trust the people who built her career, not someone who appeared only in emotional moments. Another mask slipped. Sandra recognized it instantly. She whispered one sentence, soft but steady. "You did not protect me. You decided for me." The person froze. Their eyes widened slightly as if they did not expect Sandra to confront them so directly. They tried to recover, tried to soften their expression again, but the shift had already happened. Sandra saw them clearly now. The fog of years lifted from her mind. She finally understood. Keanu stepped slightly closer to her, not touching, but offering his presence like a quiet shield. Sandra took another breath, then placed the document gently back on the table. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "You kept these secrets because they protected you, not me. You shaped my choices because you were afraid of losing control, not because you cared about my future." The person's expression cracked completely now. A hint of panic flickered behind their eyes. They leaned forward quickly, trying to regain control of the moment. They said Sandra was emotional, not thinking clearly, being influenced. They said she needed to calm down before she ruined everything. But Sandra understood something important in that moment. Someone who truly cares never uses fear to maintain closeness. She took a step back, distancing herself from the table, from the lies, from the years of silent control. The person rose from their seat, reaching out as if to stop her, but Keanu moved instinctively, stepping between them with quiet firmness. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply stood tall, calm, unshakable, creating a clear boundary that the person did not dare cross. Sandra looked at the person who had been a part of her life for so long and whispered that this conversation was over. She said she needed space. She said she needed truth, not excuses. She said she needed to reclaim the parts of her life she had lost. Their face shifted through frustration, disbelief, and finally resignation. They picked up their bags slowly, understanding they had lost their hold on her. Without another word, they walked past them and left the room, the door closing softly behind them. The moment the door clicked, Sandra felt her knees weaken. Keanu stepped toward her instantly, catching her before she stumbled. She leaned into him not because she was fragile, but because she finally allowed herself to rest. For the first time in years, the truth was not a hidden shadow. It was clear, painful, and liberating all at once. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of release. Keanu held her silently, his arms steady, his presence warm. She felt his heartbeat, calm and grounded, keeping her anchored as her emotions finally spilled free. After a long moment, she whispered something so quiet he almost missed it. "Thank you for being here." Keanu pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I would never let you face this alone." She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet affection he had never forced on her, the respect that always guided his actions. For the first time, she understood the depth of what he felt. She saw how her presence mattered to him. She saw how deeply he cared without expecting anything in return. The room felt warmer now, safer, honest. Keanu brushed a tear from her cheek with gentle fingers. "You are stronger than the past," he whispered, "and you deserve people who see that strength, not people who fear it." She felt something settle inside her, peace, belonging, clarity. Finally, Sandra smiled through her tears, soft and real. And in that quiet moment, with the weight of her history finally lifted, she saw him differently. Not as the man she feared caring for. Not as the friend she pushed away to avoid her own emotions. But as the person who stood with her when every piece of her world shook. The truth had come out. The shadows were gone. And she realized something she had been afraid to admit for years. She cared for him too,